Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to tell you, usually when I prep for these conversations, I have a pretty good idea of where we're going to end up. We start with a topic, we explore it, and we wrap it up. But today is different. I feel like we need a disclaimer at the top.
A disclaimer, like a safety warning.
A safety warning for your worldview.
Yeah.
Seriously. Because we are going to start with something as simple as, sunlight hitting your face in the morning. And by the time we are done, we will be talking about ancient teleportation networks.
Right. Yeah.
And massive star maps carved into the German landscape. And why, and this is the part I really can't get over, why you need to be very, very careful about eating schnitzel before you try to beam yourself to another continent.
The schnitzel warning is, it's absolutely key. It sounds like a joke, but in the context of what we're going to discuss, it's actually framed as a matter of life and death.
It absolutely is.
Right.
So buckle up. We are diving into a really massive body of work today. Our main source is this wide-ranging, incredibly dense interview with a Dutch filmmaker, Marijn Poels.
He's just released the third part of his documentary trilogy, which is called The Primordial Code, and this new film is titled Return to the Stars.
And it's a beautiful title, isn't it? Return to the Stars. It sounds so poetic, almost romantic. But what Poels is getting at isn't poetry. He's arguing for a literal, a physical, and a biological return to a relationship with the cosmos that he believes humanity has just completely lost.
Right. And to set the stage here, the source we're looking at is a conversation he had on a show called Lighthouse TV. And what really struck me about this interview, right from the start, was the vibe. Poels doesn't come across as a guru,
Not at all.
He doesn't seem like he's trying to sell you a crystal or a workshop. He just comes across as a filmmaker, a guy who deals in cameras and lenses and logistics, who seems to have stumbled onto something that completely shattered his own reality. That's a great way to put it. He frames himself as a skeptic throughout the whole conversation.
Yeah.
He talks about how he used to roll his eyes at astrology, how he thought energy lines were just total nonsense. He's sort of the proxy for the audience in that way.
Yeah.
He's the guy saying, okay, this sounds crazy, but let's actually look at the data.
And the catalyst for this whole journey, which I found really interesting, was the state of the world post-COVID. He spends a good bit of time at the beginning of the interview just unpacking his emotional state during that time. He says he looked around and saw a population that was, well, the phrase he uses is on their knees.
That image really stuck with me too.
Yeah.
On their knees. He's describing this state of, collective submission. He felt that after the pandemic, after all the lockdowns and the relentless fear in the news, that humanity had basically given up its autonomy.
Totally.
We're just waiting for the outside world, the government, the media, the so-called experts, to tell us what to do, to tell us it was safe to go outside, to tell us how to live our lives.
It's that feeling of total dependency. He talks about this pattern of narratives. He argues that we are constantly bombarded with these crisis narratives, whether it's, climate change, a war, a new virus, economic collapse, and that the function of these stories isn't just to inform us.
No.
It's to keep us in that kneeling position.
Exactly. I mean, if you're terrified, you're looking for a savior, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for a leader. You are definitely not looking inside yourself for answers. And Poels' mission with this whole project, with the film, is to flip that dynamic completely.
Right.
He wants to know, why have we forgotten our own power? Why are we so disconnected from our own intuition that we need a news anchor to tell us how to feel about the world?
So the mission is really about autonomy.
It's autonomy through remembrance. He believes that we've forgotten these codes, biological codes inside our bodies, and geographical codes on the surface of the Earth that are the keys to standing back up.
Okay.
His whole point is, if you know how your biology connects to the sun, and if you know how the Earth connects to the stars, you stop being a victim of the narrative. You become, well, the word he uses is sovereign.
Sovereign. I like that. So let's get into the philosophy of it before we get into the physics. Because when you start talking about cosmic connections and inner power, it's very easy for a skeptical listener to just, shut down.
Yeah, the woo factor, as they call it.
The woo factor, exactly. But Poels drops a definition of spirituality in this interview that I thought was just brilliant. It completely reframes the whole conversation. He says, spirituality is just where science stops.
I wrote that down and I underlined it twice.
Yeah.
Spirituality is just where science stops. It's such a practical, almost an engineering way to look at it.
It kind of reminds me of that God of the Gaps argument, but flipped on its head.
Precisely. Usually, skeptics use that phrase to say, oh, you just call it God because you don't understand the science yet. But Poels is saying, no, what we call spiritual or magic or fringe is simply the physics that our current instruments aren't sensitive enough to measure yet.
It's the old radio wave analogy, right? If we were sitting here in, say, 1650, and I told you that there were invisible waves moving through this very room carrying the voice of a man from London.
You'd have me committed. You'd say it was witchcraft.
Or angels or something. But today, we just call it Wi-Fi. It's mundane, it's boring. And Poels calls this the dead nerve of the scientific community. He says that mainstream science has a dead nerve, a blind spot, where it just refuses to look at anything that challenges the materialist worldview.
Yeah. If it can't be weighed on a scale or put under a microscope, it simply doesn't exist to them.
And his documentary is basically an attempt to, tickle that nerve, to sort of irritate it back to life.
Yeah, to suggest that if we just step 1 inch outside of that rigid box, a lot of the unexplained phenomena in our world, things like, intuition or the feeling you get in a huge cathedral or the impact of planetary movements, they actually start to make sense as, well, just physics.
So let's start with the physics that's closest to home. Let's start with our own biology, because one of the very first codes he unpacks is right there in our skin. It's melanin.
This was a fascinating deep dive within the deep dive, because if you ask most people, even most doctors, what melanin is, you get a pretty standard answer. It's a pigment.
Right, it makes your skin tan.
It absorbs UV radiation. It makes your skin dark. It's basically the body's built-in sunscreen.
Yeah, it's a shield. That's how we're taught to think of it.
But Poels, drawing on the researchers he features in his film, reframes melanin completely. He calls it a primordial substance. He suggests it acts as a binding agent.
A binding agent, like glue.
In a sense, yeah. He claims that on a macro scale out, in the cosmos, melanin-like structures are actually involved in holding stars together. It's a fundamental structural element of the universe.
Whoa.
And then on the micro scale, inside the human body, it's what holds our physical structure together. It's not just the paint on the house. He's saying it's the mortar in the bricks.
But he goes further than just structure, right? He talks about a process, a mechanism that involves light and water. And this is where it gets really, really specific.
It does. And this is where the whole thing about sunglasses comes into play, which I know we have to get to.
Yeah.
But the mechanism he describes works like this. Sunlight hits your eyes.
Okay.
Now, we tend to think of the eye as just a camera, right? It takes a picture and sends it to the brain.
Yeah.
But Poels argues the eye is more like a solar panel or trigger switch.
So the light enters the retina, and then what?
And then the brain splits that signal. Part of it goes to the visual cortex so you can see the world, but another part of that signal goes deep into the brain, to the pineal gland, and then signals the kidneys and other organs to start producing melanin.
So the eyes are literally the ignition key for this whole process.
That's it. And once that melanin is produced, Poels claims it has this almost miraculous function. It creates what he calls structured water within the body.
Structured water. Okay, now, I've heard this term thrown around in, alternative health circles. It's usually pretty controversial. Can we unpack what that actually means?
Sure. The standard view of water, the water in your glass, is H2O molecules just bouncing around randomly. It's chaotic. It's liquid. But the structured water theory, which is championed by researchers like Dr. Gerald Pollack, suggests that water inside living cells behaves differently.
How so?
It organizes itself. It forms this hexagonal lattice. It becomes almost like a gel or a liquid crystal.
A liquid crystal, like in an LCD screen.
A very similar principle. And because it has this coherent structure, it can hold energy, it can conduct electricity more efficiently, it facilitates communication between cells. Poels is arguing that this crystalline water is the literal essence of life and vitality.
And melanin is the factory that builds this special water.
That's the theory. It's a simple chain reaction. Sunlight hits eyes, which triggers melanin production, which in turn structures the water in your cells.
And this leads directly to his theory on aging, which I found really compelling. He just flat out says aging is dehydration.
We just dry out. Think about a baby. A baby is plump, they're juicy, they're soft.
Right, and a very old person.
Brittle, dry, wrinkled, like a raisin. Poels says this isn't a metaphor. It's a literal loss of that structured water. We are losing our internal hydration.
Okay.
So his argument is that if you keep the melanin production high by interacting with the sun properly, you keep the structured water production high. You say a grape, you don't turn into a raisin.
So in this model, sunlight isn't just something that's nice to have. It's the fuel for the fountain of youth, basically.
He says we are light beings in a very real biological sense. We photosynthesize. We turn light into matter, into the very structure of the water inside us.
But And here's the massive but that I'm sure every listener is screaming into their device right now. We are told constantly that the sun is the enemy.
The sun will kill you. The sun causes cancer. Stay out of the sun between 10 and 2. We've heard it a million times.
We're told to slather ourselves in chemical sunscreens. And maybe most importantly for this specific discussion, we are told to wear sunglasses all the time.
The sunglasses. Poels identifies sunglasses as a major component of what he calls the cage.
I have to admit, I felt a little bit attacked during this part of the interview. I love my sunglasses. I have a great pair of aviators. I think I look cool in them. But Poels says I'm actually hurting myself.
He says you're hacking your own brain, but in the worst way possible, especially if you wear them in the morning.
Okay, walk us through the morning routine problem. What's going on there?
So imagine you wake up with the AC through AM. You step outside to grab your coffee or walk the dog. The sun is up. Your skin feels the warmth. Your body knows through your skin that it's daytime.
Okay.
But then you put on your dark glasses.
Right.
Now, you have just cut the signal to the retina. You are blocking this specific spectrum of blue and UV light that is the ignition switch we talked about. You are effectively telling your brain, it's still dark, it's night.
So my skin is saying day, but my eyes are saying night.
You're creating a conflict in your own operating system.
Hmm.
Poels argues this stops that melanin production cold. So you're not creating the structured water. But even worse, it completely disrupts your circadian rhythm.
Your body clock.
Your body clocks, all your hormones, cortisol to wake you up, melatonin for sleep, serotonin for mood. They're all regulated by the frequency of light entering the eye at different times of day. If you block that morning light, the clock starts to drift. Your body doesn't know what time it is.
And he links this directly to what?
Burnout, depression, fatigue, the whole epidemic of exhaustion we see in the modern world.
So we are burning out because we are literally blocking our own charging cable.
That's a perfect metaphor for it. We are battery-operated beings who are refusing to plug into the charger because we've been convinced that the charger is dangerous.
It really makes you rethink the whole safety narrative. The narrative is protect yourself from nature. And Poels is saying, no, connect to nature to protect yourself from illness.
And he points out that we live in boxes. We sleep in a box. We drive to work in a box. We work in a box. We stare at a little light box, our screens all day. We have completely severed the connection. And then we wonder why we feel weak. We wonder why we have no energy.
It's a powerful argument, and the solution he proposes is so simple, it's just take the glasses off.
For the first hour of the day, at least, just let the signal in. Let your brain know that the day has started.
Okay, so that's the code inside the body, the biological code. But Poels doesn't stop there. He zooms out, way, way out. He goes from the melanin in our cells to the planets in the sky. We have to talk about astrology.
As above, so below.
And I have to be honest with you here. When I hear the word astrology, I have this knee-jerk reaction. I immediately think of the back page of a tabloid magazine.
Yeah, the daily horoscope.
Exactly. You are a Libra, so you're going to meet a tall, dark stranger today. It just feels so arbitrary. It feels like a parlor game.
And you are not alone in that. In fact, Marijn Poels was right there with you. He openly admits in the interview that he used to hate astrology.
He did, really? Oh, yeah.
He tells this story about how his wife would listen to these astrology podcasts in the car, and he would be in the driver's seat just seething, rolling his eyes. He found the tone annoying. He called it floaty. He couldn't stand it.
I can relate to that so much. It often just feels so ungrounded.
But he changed his mind. And he didn't change his mind because he started believing in some kind of magic. He changed his mind because he spoke to an expert, a woman named Silke Schaefer, who explained it to him in terms of physics. She gave him the magnet analogy.
Okay, this analogy was really helpful when I was reviewing the material. Can you break it down for us?
Absolutely. So imagine a wooden table. In the center of that table, you place a small magnet. That magnet represents you, a human being.
Right. And we know humans are bioelectric. We have a magnetic field that's, scientifically established with EKGs and EEGs.
Correct. The heart emits a field, the brain emits a field. We are, for all intents and purposes, little walking magnets. Now imagine you have other much larger magnets on that table, and you start moving them around the center magnet. What happens to the field of the center magnet?
It reacts. It gets pushed. It gets pulled. Maybe it even spins a little. Its own field is totally changed by the environment.
Exactly. It physically responds to the changing magnetic environment around it. It can't help it. It's just physics. Now, replace those outer magnets with Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, the moon.
Giant planetary bodies.
Giant bodies that are emitting light, radiation, gravity, and powerful electromagnetic fields. Poels' whole argument via this expert is this. We all accept that the moon, a relatively small body, pulls billions of tons of water in the ocean back and forth every single day. We call that the tides.
We don't call it magic, we call it gravity.
Right. So why is it so controversial to suggest that these massive planetary bodies, moving in very predictable orbits, would have a subtle effect on the water and the electricity inside a human body?
When you put it that way, it just sounds like simple cause and effect. We're just little magnets swimming in a sea of big magnets.
That's it. It's not about the planets predicting your fate in some mystical way. It's about the planets creating the energetic weather for the day. If it's raining, you get wet. If Jupiter is in a certain position relative to Earth, your electromagnetic field reacts in a certain way.
It's like environmental science, just on a solar system scale.
Precisely. And Poels claims that this isn't some fringe theory that nobody knows about. He claims that the people who run the world, the elites, if you want to use that term, they already know this. They use it all the time.
Ah, the secret users.
The secret users. He makes the claim that major banks and corporations have astrologers on the payroll.
They just don't list them on the company website, I'm guessing.
No, you won't find Chief Astrological Officer on the org chart. But he says they use planetary alignments to plan mergers, to sign major contracts, to launch new products. They want the energetic weather to be favorable for their venture.
There's that famous quote attributed to the banking titan J.P. Morgan.
Oh, I love this one.
Millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do.
It's perfect, isn't it? It implies that to get to that level of power, you have to understand the hidden mechanics of the game. And Poels points to the church as well. Look at the Christian calendar. Easter is a lunar calculation. It changes every year based on the full moon after the spring equinox. Christmas is a solar calculation, tied directly to the winter solstice. The institutions that have run the world for centuries have always tracked the stars.
They just packaged it as a religion or market analysis for the public.
While they use the raw data for themselves.
So the idea is the elites surf these cosmic waves, and the rest of us just get tossed around by them because we don't even know the waves exist.
That's the implication, yeah.
Now, speaking of waves, there's a very specific date that gets mentioned in the interview. February 20th, that was the release date for Poels' film. Why that date?
Well, he didn't just pick it randomly. He asked his astrologer, Silk, for a good date. And she told him February 20th because of a very rare planetary alignment. She said this specific configuration hasn't happened for 500 years.
500 years. Let's do the math on that. That takes us back to, what, the 1520s?
The early 16th century.
Yeah.
And think about what was happening in the world then.
The Renaissance was in full swing.
The Renaissance. The Protestant Reformation. The scientific revolution was just getting started. Copernicus was figuring out that the Earth goes around the sun, not the other way around.
It was a total operating system update for humanity. We were shifting from the Middle Ages to the modern era.
Exactly. The very structure of reality was changing in the minds of men. And Poels is arguing that we are on the brink of a similar shift right now. The stars are setting the stage for a new renaissance, a new understanding of who and what we are.
That sounds incredibly hopeful. We could certainly use a renaissance right about now, but Poels also ties this to something a bit more turbulent. He talks about solar cycles and the fall of empires.
This is where history meets astrophysics. And honestly, this part gave me goosebumps. Poels discusses this correlation that his researchers found. They looked at the collapse of major empires throughout history. The Mayans, the Romans, the Incas.
And what did they find? What was the pattern?
They found that every single major empire collapse coincided with a solar maximum.
Okay, let's define that for everyone. A solar maximum is when the sun is at its most active, right? Lots of sunspots, solar flare.
Exactly. The sun has this heartbeat, a cycle of roughly 11 years. It goes from quiet, which is the solar minimum, to very active, the solar maximum. But they're also longer, grander cycles. And the theory is that during these peaks of intense solar radiation, human behavior changes dramatically.
How so? Does the sun just make us all go crazy?
It creates a state of higher excitation. The theory, and there's actually a field of Russian research on this called heliobiology, is that high solar activity directly affects the human nervous system. It increases our energy. It makes people more alert, more aggressive, more critical.
It wakes people up.
It wakes them up. When the sun is quiet, we're more docile, we're easier to herd, we follow the rules. But when the sun is screaming with energy, we get rowdy, we start questioning things, we stop accepting the status quo, we stop kneeling.
So a solar maximum is a time of revolution.
Exactly. People suddenly have the energy to question the narrative. And guess where we are right now in 2026?
Let me take a wild guess. We are in a solar maximum.
We are in a very significant solar maximum.
Well, that explains the comment section on basically every website on the internet.
It explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It explains the protests, the political polarization, the general feeling of unrest everywhere. But Poels takes it a step further. He argues that the powers that be, the people who want to keep the old control system running, they know this.
They know the sun is waking us up.
They know the herd is getting restless. So what do? They can't turn off the sun. So they have to divert that rising energy.
Distraction.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Poels argues that the constant wars, the frantic news cycles, the new viruses, the climate doom, all of this noise is actually a reaction by the control system. They are trying to keep us scared and confused so that we don't use this new solar energy to liberate ourselves.
That is a really fascinating take. It reframes all the chaos. It's not that the world is necessarily ending, it's that the control system is panicking because its grip is loosening.
Exactly. If you're terrified for your safety, you aren't revolutionary. You're looking for protection. You're looking for a strong leader to tell you what to do. They are trying to burn off all that excess solar energy with fear.
And Poels makes a very specific prediction in this context regarding the financial system. He brings up the planet Uranus.
Uranus. In astrology, Uranus is known as the awakener or the great disruptor. It's the energy that breaks things that are stagnant or built on false pretenses. And Poels says Uranus is entering a phase where its job is to clean up systems built on air.
Systems built on air. That sounds ominously like our current banking and financial system.
That is exactly the example he uses. Fiat currency. Money that isn't backed by anything real. He predicts that over the next few months, these systems that have no solid foundation are going to face a massive, massive disruption. Gravity, or Uranus in this case, is coming for them.
He tells this little story about a friend of his and a phone call from a bank that really chilled me.
Yeah, I remember that. A friend of his received a call from their bank employee. And usually, these calls are scripted sales pitches. Do you want a new credit card? That sort of thing.
Right.
But this employee apparently went off script. They lowered their voice and said, "Listen, I'm not supposed to say this, but you should spread your money out. Put it in different places. Something is coming."
Wow. That's terrifying.
It is. It's anecdotal, of course. But Poels sees it as a sign that even the people working inside the machine can feel the wobble. The air is starting to leak out of the balloon.
So let's just recap where we are. We have biological codes with melanin. We have astrological codes with the planetary magnets. We have solar codes driving cycles of revolution. And it's all pointing to some kind of massive shift.
But Poels didn't just stay in his library reading charts and ancient texts. He went out into the field. He went to Germany.
Right to the geography of gods. I have to say, this part of the interview really surprised me. I consider myself pretty well read on ancient mysteries, Stonehenge, the pyramids, but I had never, ever heard of this place.
Most people haven't. It's in the Harz region of Germany, a place called Blankenburg.
And what did he find there? What is it?
He and his team explored a massive megalithic system. And when I say massive, I mean it. We are not talking about a nice little circle of stones in a farmer's field. We are talking about a structure that stands 20 kilometers.
20 kilometers. That's not a structure. That's a city. That's a landscape.
It is a landscape.
Yeah.
It includes a formation of giant, jagged rock fins sticking out of the earth called the Teufelsmauer, which means the Devil's Wall.
And mainstream science says these are what? Just natural rock formations.
Mainstream science says it's just erosion. Wind and rain over millions of years. Or the other theory is that they're failed millstones that some ancient people started carving and then just abandoned for some reason.
But Poels obviously disagrees.
He disagrees strongly. He claims that if you map these rock formations from above using satellite data, they are arranged to perfectly mirror the 12 signs of the zodiac.
A terrestrial zodiac, a star map built into the ground itself.
Exactly. And the geometry is the key. He says if you connect the 12 points that represent the zodiacal constellations, all the lines intersect at one precise center point. And at that center, there is a small, clearly a natural round stone.
A marker, the center of the whole thing.
A calibration point. Poels argues that the mathematical precision, he says it checks out to the centimeter over a 20-kilometer span, makes the natural formation theory completely impossible. Wind doesn't carve a perfect zodiac. Rain doesn't understand sacred geometry.
So what was it for? I mean, why would anyone build a giant stone zodiac in the middle of Germany?
The theory is that it was a mirror of the cosmos. It was an installation designed to harmonize the energy of the Earth with the energy of space.
Like a giant receiver dish or something.
Like a receiver or maybe a tuning fork. The idea is that ancient humans could go to this place to calibrate themselves. If you are the little magnet on the table and the stars are the big magnets, this structure helps you align with those cosmic forces. It's a place to sync your internal clock with the grand cosmic clock.
It's like wirelessly charging your soul.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And it implies a level of technology or geomancy Earth magic, if you will, that we have completely lost. We don't build cities like that anymore. We just build grids for cars, not for energy.
And this leads us directly into the concept of ley lines, doesn't it? Because these stones aren't just isolated islands, they're apparently connected.
Right. Now, ley lines is a term most people have probably heard. It was coined by a guy named Alfred Watkins back in the 1920s. He noticed that ancient sites, barrows, stone circles, old churches, often lined up in perfectly straight lines across the landscape.
But Poels' research uncovered an older term, a much more interesting term.
He did. Buried in locked monastery archives, he says they found the term Grund- und fundamentale Linien.
Grund- und fundamentale Linien. That sounds very German and very serious. Ground and fundamental lines.
It sounds structural, doesn't it?
Right.
It implies they're fundamental to the Earth's actual operation, not just imaginary lines drawn by humans on a map, but the actual wiring of the planet.
And he mentions St. Michael's line specifically.
The Apollo-St. Michael line, yeah. It's probably the most famous one in these circles. It runs all the way from Israel, through Greece at Delphi, through Italy, France at Mont Saint-Michel, up to St. Michael's Mount in England, and ends at Skellig Michael in Ireland.
It connects all these Michael and Apollo sun god spots.
Yeah, and it connects major power spots.
Okay, what makes a spot a power spot? Is it just that it has a nice view?
No, it's usually geology. These are often places where underground water veins cross or where there are geological faults that create these weird electromagnetic vortices. These are places where the Earth's magnetic field behaves differently. You can actually measure it with instruments.
And the church knew about this.
Oh, absolutely. Why do you think so many of the great cathedrals are built directly on top of ancient pagan holy sites? They didn't just want to erase the pagan history, they wanted the real estate. They wanted to co-opt the battery charger.
So when you walk into a cathedral like Chartres or Notre Dame and you feel that sense of awe, that vibration.
It might be the beautiful architecture, it might be the choir music, but it might also be the fact that you are standing on a massive electromagnetic node of the Earth. You are literally standing on a plug.
Okay, so we have established that the ancients knew about energy, they knew about the stars, they knew about the Earth's grid, but now we have to go to the deep end of the pool.
The deep end, yes.
We have to talk about teleportation.
I was wondering when we'd finally get here.
This is the part of the interview where Poels himself admits he felt like he was in a Harry Potter movie, but he insists this is based on serious research.
Right. He's interviewing a historian named Heinrich Kusch. And it's important to note, this guy Kusch isn't a lightweight. He's a prehistorian who has spent 60 years exploring underground tunnel systems in Europe. He's a field researcher, not some fantasy novelist.
And what does this researcher claim?
Kusch claims, based on translated Latin texts he found in monasteries, that these ancient ground and fundamental lines were used for teleportation.
To move physical objects? Or people?
People. The claim is that they had a method to break matter down into light particles. They would then send these particles along a one-dimensional guide ray through these ley lines and then reassemble them at another node on the grid.
So if I'm in a chamber in Austria, I can beam myself to South America.
Theoretically, yes, using the Earth's natural energy grid as a kind of fiber optic cable for matter.
And what was the trigger? How did they turn the system on?
Sound. Kusch mentions specific sound frequencies, a sequence of 4 tones that would activate the field necessary for this to happen.
We see this idea of sound technology in so many ancient myths, don't we? The walls of Jericho, the building of the pyramids, Tibetan monks levitating stones with chanting.
Resonance. It always seems to come back to resonance. If you can hit the right frequency, matter changes state.
But, and here's the deep dive detail that I love, and the one we warned everyone about at the beginning. There is a danger, a very specific, very weird danger.
The Schnitzel problem.
Please, for the love of science, explain the Schnitzel problem.
So Kusch is explaining this unbelievably high-tech ancient physics, this mind-bending concept of dematerialization. And then he just casually drops this warning. He says you have to be very, very careful what you eat before you teleport.
Why? What's the issue?
Because if you have foreign DNA in your stomach, like a piece of pork schnitzel, The teleportation field might get confused during the reassembly process.
So what? It might not bring the schnitzel with you?
Or worse, it might try to incorporate the schnitzel DNA into your DNA.
Oh my God, no.
You might arrive at your destination in South America as some kind of human-pig hybrid, or with a piece of meat fused into your liver.
That is horrifying. It's like the movie The Fly, but with your lunch.
It is. And you can hear Poels and the host of the show just laughing because it sounds completely absurd. But Kush is dead serious. He says the field reads your unique DNA signature. Anything that isn't you is a contaminant. It's a purity test for your biology.
It sounds insane. I mean, let's just be honest. It sounds absolutely ridiculous.
It does. It absolutely does. But Poels makes a really good point here to ground it a little. He uses what I'd call the Zoom call analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine trying to explain a Zoom call to someone from the year 1900. You tell them, okay, I'm going to take a moving picture of my face. I'm going to break my face down into millions of invisible data packets. I'm going to shoot those packets through the air to a tower, then up to a satellite in space, then back down to a server in Japan, and then reassemble my face perfectly on a glass screen in Tokyo, all in real time.
They would say you're a wizard. They would say it's literal magic.
Exactly. Breaking down information and reassembling it somewhere else is what we do every single day with 5G and Wi-Fi. Kush is simply suggesting that the ancients could do it with biological matter instead of digital data. It's just a more advanced form of the same basic principle.
That perspective shift is really powerful. We just assume we are the peak of technology because we have iPhones. But maybe we're just rediscovering a different kind of tech that works with nature instead of against it.
That is the absolute core of Poels' message. What if the fairy tales are actually the reality? What if the magic we read about, telepathy, instant healing, teleportation, was just the standard operating system of humanity before we forgot the code?
And there's a darker side to this teleportation story too, isn't there? The modern researchers who looked into it, it didn't end well for them.
No. Kush mentions a Ukrainian scientist and an Austrian professor, Dr. Wolfgang Neubauer. He claims they tried to replicate this ancient tech, and he alleges that they succeeded in beaming themselves to a nearby mountain called the Rebenwaldkugel.
And then what happened?
And then they died. One was apparently poisoned. The other died 3 hours before an interview he was scheduled to give about his research.
That fits the whole forbidden knowledge trope perfectly, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests that there are people, or maybe forces, who do not want this code to be unlocked. I mean, if we could all teleport, borders would be meaningless, control would become impossible.
So we've gone from the sun to the stones to the schnitzel teleportation. It has been a wild ride. But Poels brings it all back to a very simple, very human conclusion.
Yeah.
He talks about the piece cake.
The piece cake. I think it's a bit of a translation quirk. He probably means a piece of the cake or a slice of peace.
Yeah.
But the sentiment is beautiful.
Right. What is the ultimate goal of all this knowledge? Is it to build a teleporter? Is it to live forever?
No. The ultimate goal is just inner peace. It's about becoming untouchable.
Ungripbar.
Ungripbar. Ungraspable. Poels argues that the system, the control matrix, the news narratives, the fear, it relies on your engagement. It relies on you being scared. It relies on you looking at the news and having a strong emotional reaction. It literally feeds on your attention.
But if you stand in your own power...
If you know that you are a cosmic being, if you know that you are connected to the sun and the earth, if you know your own biology is a literal powerhouse, you just stop being afraid. You withdraw your attention from the fear machine.
And when you withdraw your attention, the machine loses its power over you.
You become untouchable. You are in the world, but you are not of it. You're watching the play, but you know you aren't one of the characters on stage. You are the audience. Or maybe you're even the director of your own play.
He talks about epigenetics as well, doesn't he? That this isn't about learning something totally new. It's about remembering.
Yes, that's a key point. We are the direct descendants of the people who built those stone circles and understood these forces. We carry their DNA. The knowledge is dormant inside us. It's just waiting to be tickled awake.
And the things that tickle it awake are the things we've been talking about this whole time. The sun, the earth, the stars.
It's a call to return to nature, not just for your physical health, but for your memory, to remember who you really are.
So if we had to boil this entire deep dive down to one final takeaway for the listener, what would you say it is?
I think it's a challenge, really. It's a challenge to question your definition of reality. Poels says systems that are built on air are about to collapse. If the outside world of news and politics is just a distraction, What happens if you just decide it doesn't exist for you anymore?
What happens if you just turn it off?
Pohl says he lives on a farm now, and when he's there, the chaos of the world simply isn't real to him. It only becomes real when he turns on a screen and engages with it. So the question is, how much of your reality is only real because you're actively agreeing to participate in it?
That is a thought to chew on for the rest of the week.
And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow morning. Leave the sunglasses on the table.
Step outside, look up at the sky,
You fly in.
and see what codes you might wake up.
Who knows? You might just remember how to fly.
Just don't eat the schnitzel first.
Exactly. Safety first. Always.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. It has been a mind-bending one. Keep looking up. We'll see you in the next one.